Hello, and welcome to the RIA Tech Talk podcast brought to you by RIA Workspace. I'm Todd DeRoca, and alongside me, as always, is Mr. David Kakish. Together, we're on a mission to simplify the complex world of technologies for RIAs just like yours. So, in the podcast, we'll be your tech guides breaking down those often confusing tech topics, and we'll put them into plain, practical terms for you. And so we hope you join us each week in each episode as we dive into the latest tech trends. We'll share expert insights and help you navigate the ever-changing world of the RIA technology universe. So let's get started. David, hello. How are you?
I am fantastic, Todd. Yourself?
Good. I'm doing well. And before we started today, I don't know if most people who are listening to this, we're at the end of this big Arctic blast. So I know, David, you're keeping warm as well as I am. So it's a little nippy up there where you are. Is that correct?
Yeah, right here in Chicago, our high today is 34. So it's a heat wave.
Well, David, we're going to talk today about document storage. So that's the big topic for today. You know, what is the best document storage solution for my RRA? And so, David, obviously your team works with tons of RIAs every day, obviously. So what are you seeing out there right now when it comes to document storage?
Yeah, thanks. Yes, we're going to talk a little bit about document storage specifically for your RIA. You know, one of the big things that we see with a lot of the Gartner reviews and the third-party reviews is that they're talking about document management, but they don't really, say, hey, what's the best document management solution for an RIA? So a bank is very different than an RIA. A hospital is very different than an RIA. A manufacturing company is very different than an RIA. So a lot of the third-party reviews that go out there, and they review Microsoft and Dropbox and Google and everybody else. They're not necessarily saying, hey, how do I, as an RIA with 5 employees, 20 employees, use that? And that's really what we're going to focus on today. I'm really interested in what's the best document management solution for your RIA. And for other RIAs that are in this vertical. And there's one clear winner in my mind, and they're not paying me to do this, by the way. I should say that.
We'll hold the suspense for later. Yeah, we'll keep this.
I'm not. Quick disclaimer: I'm not getting paid to announce who the winner is. Right? This is based on our experience. But I also want to talk about a really interesting trend that I'm seeing here in the there's a shift that's happening, and it's an interesting one that I just want to share with the listener. But I guess, hey Todd, just for fun, when I know I know you're not a financial advisor, but we talk about this. So when I ask you about a document storage solution, what comes to mind? Like, it's a fancy word for something else, but what, when I ask you that question, document storage, what comes to mind? I'm curious.
I mean, right off the top, it's Google Drive,
Okay.
finding an iCloud drive, putting my storage there. But also I have an external hard drive literally right next to me here in the studio. And I do a lot of editing and stuff. So obviously I put it there. So that's where I put a lot of scripts and other things in that. So I've got external, and in cloud storage. So that's what comes to my mind is,
Sure.
And also I think for me, it's how can I access the document quicker and faster as I'm traveling?
Yeah.
So that's also how I look at, document storage is
Sure.
where can I easily access it no matter what computer I'm on and where I'm at.
Yeah. And then for RIAs, a real big one, I'll typically throw in is they're always thinking about the security, right? Like,
Yeah.
if somebody leaves, how easy is it for them to take the files or, some of the information and stuff like that? So security and then IT compliance, right? Those are kind of things that pop up. So, all right. So there's 4, I'll jump right on in, Todd, if that's okay with you. There's 4.
Oh yeah, let's go for it.
All right, cool. I get excited about this stuff. So, I don't want to get too excited that I get ahead of myself, but there's 4
Only
categories.
you, David, would get this excited about stuff. It's great though. We love it. All right, let's go for it, David.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because I get so excited about it. Even when I'm talking to, potential new clients, I have to keep myself not get off on too many tangents. But I love the podcast because this gives me a venue to you know what? I want to talk some more, So, because again, when I'm talking one-on-one with clients, I have to remain focused. But here, we get off on a tangent and we have fun with it. So, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Document storage solutions, they fall in 4 categories, right? The first category are the big players, think Microsoft, Google, Citrix, right? That's one category. The second category are the RIA specialty players, such as Redtail Imaging, Net Documents, Laserfish. The category number 3, or the third category, is the big cloud players like Box.com, Dropbox, Ignite, that's that. And then the fourth category, and Todd, you probably looked at the notes, but if I were to ask you what's the fourth category without
I
looking at
haven't
the notes.
I haven't looked that far ahead, I'll tell you
Oh,
that.
okay, okay,
So,
okay.
so this,
All right.
so you've got the big ones, you've got the small niche ones, and the big cloud players. Oh, I would. What about uh, like iCloud stuff, or would it be external? Well, no.
I would still classify Apple as
That
sort of
is
like the big player, right? I mean,
big
Apple,
players.
yeah, 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 yeah. It's
But what
not
about, I
heavy.
guess, like on-site storage, like my
Yeah.
external hard drive kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. That's a
Oh,
fourth category.
got it.
So there's a lot of, there's still a good number of RIAs that still have like a file server in the office, or like a
Yeah.
network attached storage, or a shared drive, or different people will have different things for it, right? So like everybody, it's kind of funny. I'll even say this, sort of outside of the cloud's like the big thing and this and that and stuff like that, and that's cool. But outside of the RIAs, there's still a ton of technology where there's still a lot of on-premise servers, on-site servers, and things like that. But in the RIA space, we don't see that a lot, but there's still that fourth category of people that still have like a file server, or a shared network attached storage, or a shared drive, whatever and it sits in their office. So those are kind of like the 4 broad categories.
And can I ask, David, is that when you see people who have them on site, is that because of legacy where they just don't want to change and they like where it's at? Is it because of compliance issues with, Starbucks or something else? Or is it just because, like, why do you see that? What's the main reason why they have that on site?
Yeah, both. Legacy is a big one, compliance is a big one, and then for the longest time, right? There's this fear of, I put it on Dropbox.com, it's very easy for the outside world to get a hold of all that. So like, you brought up something at the top of the call, which is really important. Is like, hey, how easy is it to access it when I'm driving? But sort of a follow up to that is, how easy is it for somebody to access that and take it and potentially expose our RIA? How do we secure it, right? How do we lock it down, right? And it's a balancing act. But yeah, and here's the deal: like, I don't want you or the listener to think that, hey, listen, if you've got an on-site server or network attached, like you're behind the times. Everything serves a business, right? Just because something is, Eric on my team likes to say that, hey, look, we don't play with our clients in the bleeding edge space, because bleeding edge has a lot of bugs. We play in the leading edge. So there's a difference
There you
between
go.
the bleeding edge and the leading edge. And I've incorporated that a lot. And, with many of the big players, I usually don't go with V1 or V2. We wait until V3 when they've sorted out all the bugs and stuff like that. So to be fair, it's not like if somebody's got something in their office that they're way behind the times, right? It's just that it made sense, and they kept it. And also, for the people that want to maximize their investment, right? You bought a server, you want to leverage it, you want to use that. So, but yeah. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
Cool. All right. So these are the 4 categories. I'm going to take each category and kind of talk about it vaguely, and then at the end, I want to keep a little bit of suspense. So I'm not going to announce the winner yet, but I will at the end. So, all right. So Microsoft let me talk about Microsoft, Google, Citrix, and we'll throw in Apple too for good measure. Even though Apple isn't like Apple is pretty big in the consumer space, we don't see a lot of. And again, I'm talking about their storage, right? Not the MacBook or anything like that.
Yeah.
But their storage, they're not. So with Microsoft, there's a product that's called OneDrive, and there's a product that's called SharePoint. OneDrive is great for a consumer or a small business. I would not recommend that for an RIA. SharePoint is more for an enterprise or a big business. And when I say SharePoint, if many of our listeners remember SharePoint from like 10 years ago, it's a totally, Microsoft has totally revamped that. It's basically a way for you where you can use SharePoint where you're using File Explorer on your Windows computer, or you're using Finder on your MacBook. And I'll just kind of leave it at that.
Got it.
Google, a lot of people know this, right? Because schools use it, and Google has Google Drive, right? And it's part of the G Suite, or what Google now calls Google Workspace. And not a lot of RIAs are using that. Like there are some. And then Citrix has, excuse me, Citrix has something called Citrix ShareFile. And this has been very popular with RIAs for quite a while now, because it's a great way. The big challenge with RIAs is, how do you send and receive secure documents with your client? So if I'm an RIA, how do I easily send and receive documents? Because email encryption can sometimes be clunky and hard for the recipient. So Citrix ShareFile had a phenomenal solution for quite a long time, and there's a lot of people that are using that, and it's an easy and secure way for me to send and receive files. And where we see a lot of RIAs using that, we see a lot of CPA firms using that, right? Like tax documents and stuff like that. You don't want to send that over regular email. And then Apple has the iCloud, right? But iCloud is really consumer. We don't really see a lot of businesses that are using iCloud in the way that you're thinking about that. So those are category one, are the big players: Microsoft, Google, Citrix, and Apple.
Got
Make
it.
sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. All right. I'm going to move over to category number two, which is the RIA specialty players. So these are, document storage solutions that focus on RIAs. Sometimes there's some other verticals too, but financial advisors, RIAs is the big one. Redtail Imaging, Net Documents, Laserfiche, DocuPace, World Docs, eFile Cabinet, right? These are people that have done really well traditionally in this space, that focused on financial advisors and RIAs. What's really interesting that we've seen over the last, I'd say, 3 to 5 years, a lot of RIAs are moving away from these specialty or these niche players to main players like Microsoft, Google, and Citrix. It's really, really interesting. And I think what's happened is, historically, there was a lot of value add when you use something like Laserfiche or Net Documents. There's a lot of workflow and things like that. And what's happened is, so many of the features and simplicity of these big players, it's available now, that using something like Laserfiche or Net Documents isn't really adding that much value using, as if I use SharePoint or Google Drive or Citrix ShareFile, right?
Yeah.
And the big one for a long time was the integration with my CRM. So if I used Wealthbox or Redtail or whatever is my CRM, I wanted something to integrate with that, and the specialty players integrated, but the big players now integrate with that. So it's really interesting to see that trend. And if you look at that, a lot of these players have lost market share to some of the big players in this space.
And have you seen the specialty players here? Are they answering back to, I guess, losing market share from the bigger companies, or are they fighting back at all? Are they changing how they're doing things? Like if a RIA was to look at these kind of things, is there any, benefit still to going with a smaller niche one, or is it just,
it comes down to integration. Like so I'll keep it simple. If SharePoint is going to integrate it with Wealthbox, why am I using a third-party tool, right? Like, Laserfiche or, whatever it is. That's really what it comes down to. I think what these niche players have concluded is, they're not going to beat Microsoft and Google and Citrix at the document storage game, but they are going to beat them at a CRM and other other value add things that you can provide. So yeah, they're just, if you're going to go up against Microsoft or Google, you're going to lose that battle. So they're focusing on other things rather and the value is just not there anymore. And why play in that space? That's kind of what I'm seeing that. And then so I would just, and it's interesting trend. Like this is my analysis to why that is. Maybe there's something else going on, but that's sort of my analysis. So, okay. All right. So again, category one, we said are the big players like Microsoft and Google and Citrix and Apple. Category two are the RIA specialty document storage solutions like Redtail and others. Redtail Imaging, I should say, because Redtail is also a CRM. And then category three are the big cloud players like Box.com, Dropbox, Ignite, and those are probably kind of like the big ones. So Dropbox, Box.com, and Ignite that we see playing in this space. And I think why, to your point, why people started using that was very easy to use, very intuitive, and great collaboration, right? Like, hey, I can quickly access this one on the road. I don't have to use my VPN to remote into my file server and then do this, or I don't have to, I don't have to, it's not super complicated for me to share something with a client or with a partner, but also adding some of the security to sort of lock that down. So these are kind of like the big cloud players. And to be fair, there was a void that they were filling, and that's why people kind of flocked to that, and they did that. So okay.
Okay. Yeah.
And then the fourth category, again, doesn't mean you're behind the times or anything. It just means you're maximizing your investment, is where you have an on-site file server, or if you've got some kind of a network attached storage, or a drive, or you're doing something like that. Now, the big challenge we see with people like that is, as a whole, the entire industry in the RIA space and financial services and wealth management has moved to web-based applications. So I'll use one example. Think of like Juncture, right? You used to have Juncture Server Edition. Now there's Juncture Cloud, right? Everything is sort of moved to a cloud-based application. So what happens is, I'll give you an example, and this is what frustrates a lot of people that have an on-site server, is they'll be working from home. They can access all of their applications, but to access their files, they have to remote into the firewall in their office, a Cisco VPN or a SonicWall VPN or whatever, and then they can access the files and folders, and then they have VPN issues. And then, so Todd, to your point, this is kind of really like, if you're not working in the office all the time and you're working remote, or, it's like, oh man, you're just dealing with it. And it's the last thing you want to be dealing with, right? A
Yeah.
VPN issue, or, it's not syncing, or, whatever the case might be. But again, if you're physically in the office most of the time and you're working, and that file server is right there, you're not really going to hit a lot of issues. But also the big thing with file server that I see is, not a lot of people are doing a great job of backing that up. And what I mean by that is they're confusing redundancy on that server with backup. And like their IT provider isn't necessarily giving him a backup report, or clearly showing that it's been backed up and stuff like that. So there's some nightmare stories out there, but they're not going to announce it. But yeah, where they thought something was being backed up, and it really wasn't.
So let me ask you,
Yeah.
about that when it comes to redundancy and backup. So, way back when this all first kind of came out, you would say we have to have 3 redundancies on here. So if something goes out there, we can still access it here. Or, let's make sure we back up the backup so we have our files. In what you're seeing now, are you seeing your clients having 2 solutions at the same time, like a Dropbox and a Google, or are you seeing the space be more secure and reliable that may not need to happen anymore?
Yeah. It's a great question. So when I talk about, let's just kind of pretend, because people can wrap their head around the file server, or a server that contains the files, right?
Yep.
What you had on that server is you had something called redundancy. So you had 3 hard drives. If one of them failed, no problem, that server could continue. But redundancy is not the same as backup, right? You want to have the redundancy because hard drives fail, and you want to continue to have that, right? So you had the redundancy on that server, but then typically, like back in the old days, it seems like ancient times, you would back up to tape or another hard drive, and you would take it home, and you know what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So and then the technology advanced where, like, okay, great, I have an on-site server, I can do a backup to the cloud, right? So I have another backup that's sitting in the cloud securely. So taking that, and you're asking a great question, because not a lot of people are thinking about that. So if my data is sitting at Dropbox, right? And it could be anybody, Microsoft, Google, whatever. I'm going to pick on
Sure.
Dropbox. It's sitting there. These companies, because this is their bread and butter, they have a ton of redundancy, right? Like the odds, it's a 99.9999. The odds of something happening to that file or folder because of Dropbox is practically zero, right?
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
what people don't think about is, what if you hire a new employee and he goes in and he deletes everything, or deletes, I don't know, Todd goes in and deletes a critical file folder structure, right?
Hmm.
Well, that has nothing to do with a redundancy, right? That has to do more with like, hey, is it archived? Do I have the ability to go back? A lot of
Right.
places give you the ability to go back up to 30 days. But what if Todd went and deleted something and it's 90 days later, right?
Yeah.
Done, gone, right? So,
Right.
and I'll, so you bring up a really good point, which is there are people now that say, hey, listen, my stuff is sitting at Google. I want to have a backup someplace else with a third-party company or Microsoft or whatever. And that's something for you to think about.
Mm.
And I'll tie it into into the winter, but I just wanted to talk about the 4 different categories of document storage solutions that are out there.
Hmm.
And I guess, Todd, I'll turn it back to you if there's anything you wanted to add or ask, and then I'll announce who I think the winner is in my view.
No, I think, from the client side, from just in general, obviously you work very closely with RIAs, and I work very closely with tech companies and other people in the space, and I will agree that they are going more toward that more stable, bigger box solution, just
Sure.
because of, one, as many times I'm a contractor for them, they can easily shut me out whenever they want to. And, they're lowering their risk of, me doing something crazy, which I would never do. But that's one of the things. But
Yep.
I think too, now, because of the remote work and companies, their talent pool is bigger and locations are all over the place, they are trying to find that one solution, and these bigger ones do offer them that, reach, but also the secure file sharing that they need. So, from my different viewpoint, I would agree that that is what I'm seeing a lot of too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I rarely see, like, integrations are a big thing. And for me too, a lot of the tools that I use from the tech marketing side, integrations are still a big thing, but they were very niche at one point,
Yep.
but
Yep.
now you've got obviously Google and other players that are just seamlessly integrating and saying, well, here you go. So as a person who uses those platforms, you're right. Why would I want to have to manage 3 platforms when I can just manage 2, the
Yep.
one I'm using and the backup storage, or, the other uh, cloud
Yeah, I
server.
mean,
So
the one thing that I will say is a lot of times when you're using a third-party tool to back up, you're not really using it. That's your insurance plan, right?
security blanket.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's sitting on, Google, and then you're using 2 platforms at once. It's sitting on Google, and then you've got it there just, as you're right, as a security blanket. So
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Now,
So who's the winner, David? Who
yeah.
who would you say, that is the better place to store your documents? I can only guess. I can only guess.
I'm gonna go ahead and put a quick disclaimer. I'm not getting paid to say this. I'm not getting paid by this company or by this vendor or anything like that, right? So in the space we're in the RIA space, the clear winner from my perspective is Microsoft SharePoint.
Right.
And for anybody that's been listening to me there, again, it's Todd, it's not a
I
surprise.
asked him, folks. I said, "Look, do you have a secret deal with Microsoft?" But I will say he is vendor agnostic. A lot of discussions that we have, he's very
Yes,
vendor
yes.
agnostic.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
And again, I'm
Microsoft.
not, listen, outside of the RIA space or other industries, or let's just say, in the academic world, or like, hey, listen, Google's a big player for many different reasons, and I get it, but specifically for financial advisors and RIAs, Microsoft SharePoint's the clear winner.
Mm.
And let me kind of qualify a couple of things here. Please don't think it's the same SharePoint from 10 years ago. That's number one. The way that this SharePoint works is you basically, again, on your computer, if you're using Windows, you open up File Explorer. It's indexed locally on your computer, but it's saved at the Microsoft data center. You don't even have to have it local on your computer. On a MacBook, you just open up Finder and then you're working. And again, it's indexed on your MacBook, but it's saved at the Microsoft data center. If you are going to be working without an internet connection, you can, download it and work locally. And then when you connect to the internet, it's going to sync up. So from an employee perspective, it's very, very, very simple and easy to use. It's basically totally integrated with my, with my Windows computer or my MacBook. Now on the back end, there's a lot of enterprise security that we set up. And part of the reason why I say this is a winner, it's many reasons. The enterprise security is a big one. But also you're most likely paying as an RIA, you're most likely already paying for your Microsoft subscription to use the Office suite, Microsoft 365, and SharePoint's included. You probably just don't know it. And it integrates really well with the CRMs and with RIA software. Everybody wants to integrate, with the Microsoft solution now. So you can have a link from your Word document or from that file folder structure that you can kind of, put into your CRM. Security groups and permissions. I'm telling you, if you're using OneDrive, that's good. It's okay. But SharePoint is 10 times better than OneDrive from the security groups and permissions. For example, most of our clients, what we're doing is most of the folders are locked down internally, and you cannot share that with the outside world. But there are specific folders, marked, folder 1-external, right? You can share that with the outside world. Part of the reason why Citrix ShareFile was very popular, and now it's sort of kind of dying away in this specific vertical, was you could easily share files back and forth. Hey, to upload a secure document, click here, and they click on the link and then they upload that. That is something that is available with Microsoft SharePoint. The other thing that you can do, if you work a lot with a CPA firm, right? You're a financial advisor, you're an RIA, but you work with Todd's CPA firm. You can actually have external folders where you can securely share back and forth, Todd and I, where we don't have to email things and Todd can upload that. The other thing that we can do, and we do this for our clients, is you asked about sort of backup and disaster recovery. We're actually archiving these documents. So we're doing a backup within Microsoft's data center. We're doing 2 backups, and then we're doing file versioning so that if I overwrite something, I can go back up to, now this needs to be set up. I can go back up to 500 times and say, hang on, give me that document from 2 weeks ago before I overwrote and I lost 10 hours worth of work, right? And again, you can hyperlink directly to files and folders or the Word document or Excel document itself. And so I'm kind of I'm talking about some of the features because, again, not a lot of people know that this is something that is available and you can do sort of in the Microsoft ecosystem. But that's why I say, I'm listen, Microsoft SharePoint is the clear winner. Doesn't mean the other guys are bad or that they don't work or anything like that. But I like it because, again, you're probably paying for it and you don't know it. And I like it because it integrates with a lot of the third-party applications in this RIA vertical. And then I like it because there's a lot of things that you can do with it that you just don't know about it. So anyways, and there's just a lot of misconception around that, right? I'm Microsoft is the easy company for people to talk smack about, right? And I'm yeah,
it is.
fine.
But they just became I think they got the top place now for the most valuable company over Apple after all those years.
Really?
Now.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I haven't been following.
So there you go.
I'm so focused on very specific solutions. I didn't look at that. That's interesting. Yeah. The new CEO is doing phenomenal. It's just So, all right. So Todd, I covered a lot of stuff, and you can probably tell I get excited. And it's again, there's just some misconceptions around that. Again, I don't want to say Google is bad because Google is not. I don't want to say that, these others, they're not. There's specific reasons to why, in my view, that Microsoft is the winner, and I kind of share that. So, So,
of course, okay. So, lots of information, as you said, you covered today, David. So let's kind of remind listeners and watchers what they need to think about when it comes to these storage, document storage solutions. We've got 4 categories. First category is Microsoft, Google, and Citrix, those big players out there that you should keep in mind. The second category in that storage area is the RIA specialty players like Redtail Imaging, NetDocuments, and Laserfish. And you were saying that these are slowly going to the side now because of the integrations that the category one companies are doing by, making it a lot simpler.
Yeah, because
so
these companies are focused on a CRM or portfolio management or something very specific. This has just been, this has been another product that they introduced, but that's not their core competency and their core focus. So that piece is kind of really disintegrating, quickly, actually.
Got it. Okay. Category 3, we got the big cloud players like Box.com, Dropbox, and Ignite. And then the last category number 4, is that on-site storage, the servers on-site that some of the RAs still use out there, and some companies who are not RAs do still use it. So, and obviously, David, your final recommendation is for those to use Microsoft SharePoint, for a variety of reasons. But the big reason is, David,
you're paying for it already.
Yeah.
There's a lot of enterprise security that you can do with that. And then you could use hyperlinks that you probably weren't aware that, you can do. Those are probably the 3 main reasons. And then I should say, like, hey, if you want, we talked for quite a while about this, but we have a much shorter article on our website, and we'll link it in the show notes. That's basically saying what's the best document storage for your RIA, and we kind of, we put like it's much more summarized, there, so you can kind of get the you can get the gist right there. But then also, if you are using OneDrive, we have we're going to link it in the show notes why your RIA should ditch OneDrive and use SharePoint instead. There's very specific articles, and those are much more concise. You can kind of look at that and you can see what that is. So hopefully Todd and I are also entertaining you, beyond just talking tech.
Yeah. And if we are, hey, leave us a review and subscribe. And I will tell you, as a marketing guy myself, leaving those reviews really do help, with the algorithms that we have to play with Apple and all those Stitchers and all that stuff. So please leave us a review. And as always, we do want to hear from you. So if there's an episode that you'd like us to focus on of a specific topic, just send it over in the notes, or email us, and we'd love to hear from you and get your feedback. So, hey, we do want to say thank you again for listening to the RIA Tech Talk podcast. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. And of course, it's brought to you by RIA Workspace. And so for more podcasts and resources, go to www.riaworkspace.com and check out the Learning Center, where the show notes will be, the documents that we talked about will be in the show notes, but also on that resource center. And so again, for David Kakish and the whole entire team here, we want to say thanks for joining us, and we hope you stay tuned for our next episode about RIA Tech Insights. We'll see you next time, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you.